Shalom, Menachem. Can you hear me?
I can. I think Menachem's still connecting.
Okay.
At least that's what my screen says. Are you speaking this afternoon at the NYU?
Yeah. At 2 p.m. New York time, 1 p.m. your time. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So
And
this is the
then-
second, and
Second, yeah, I forgot that it was you, and so I didn't listen last week.
Okay, yeah, and yeah, it'll be a continuation of the talk last time. So I'm going to pause the recording. Oh, who is the host? This is so strange. Oh, I see. I have to claim host. So let's see. Hello, Menachem. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Fine. Just getting ready here. I have to check something. So let's see. Because for some strange reason, this is not seeing me as the host. I don't understand why, but I'm fixing it now. So
Don't forget to allow me to share screen.
sorry.
Don't forget to allow me to share screens.
That's the crucial point. Yes. That's.
And by the way, you can see that I'm appearing twice as a participant because also the computer and the tablet.
Okay. Yeah. I saw that.
Mode of lecturing and teaching, but that's this is the result of the time. Let me just say that please feel free to ask questions, interrupt. It will be very several, like very few proofs or idea proofs, but please feel free to interrupt. People that have been in Jerusalem know what the Jerusalem seminar spirit is. Namely, it's okay to interrupt the speakers every second sentence, and to ask questions, make suggestions, and so on. And that's the way I like it. So please feel free.
Okay, we will.
Okay. So anyway, why doesn't move? No, what's going on? It doesn't. Oh, okay. Okay, so here are the sections of the talk. The search for canonical inner models, logic between first order and second order, and inner models constructed from generalized logics. Now, most of what I have to say is a joint work with Juliet Kennedy and Yoko, which is very much a work in progress. There are other people that I mentioned that joined in during that process. It was actually initiated, as far as I'm concerned, by Juliet and Yoko, that make a suggestion about studying these inner models, the connection between inner models and generalized logics, as a way of both understanding better definability, or trying to crystallize the notion of definability in set theory. On the other hand, trying to get some other way of classifying general logic. I'll try and explain what the basic ideas here. Okay, now the search for canonical inner models is an attempt to deal with incompleteness. You try to say you got a whole jungle of models of set theory, and you can create using forcing and using other methods. There aren't that are so many other methods, but basically inner models. you can create models of set theory with all kinds of properties. But you would like to somehow, out of this jungle, identify the animals which are more important, more basic, and in some sense, you would like to adopt them as your universe, rather than something to rely on this in this, some more something which is more understandable in this jungle. Now, a canonical inner model should be reasonably robust. I'll say something about what robust means, but also rather inclusive. Robustness means you can have three meanings of robustness. For instance, stability of the model, definition of the model, and changes in the definition. Namely, you live in a fixed universe of set theory, you define some inner model, and it would be nice if there would be many equivalent definitions which come from different motivations. In some sense, similar to what you have for computability, right? The notion of computable functions. Historically, there were many definitions suggested, and all turned out to be equivalent. So there is a robustness under the definition. Now, it would be very nice if you have robustness across universes of set theory. Namely, you live in one universe, you got a bigger universe. Say you even you insist that the bigger universe shares the same ordinals. In particular, it will be nice if it will be stable under forcing extensions. And at least if the second item is too much to ask for, you may ask for the theory of the model, or an important part of the theory is invariant under forcing extensions. So this is the kind of robustness that you, I mean, the third item is probably something which is a weakening of the second item, but many times that's all you can have. On the other end, which in some sense is a conflicting requirement, is that you got some kind of completeness for the model. You want a canonical inner model, so canonical definable objects should be included. The feeling is that if there is an object which itself is very absolute, very, for instance, not changed by forcing, and the same definition of that object applies over different models of set theory, the model should be inclusive enough to include such objects. A litmus test of the objects I have in mind, for instance, are sharps or other canonical operations. Sharps are a way of, for instance, if you think about zero sharp, which is a real which tells you that L universe is very small compared with the whole universe, and it's very robust. You can't change if you do have a zero sharp, then you can't change it by its meaning by forcing. If you got two universes of set theory sharing the same ordinals, then if one thinks about something as zero sharp, then the other one. So it's a very robust object, and a nice inner model should contain objects like this. Again, you can't always have for all the objects, but this is a desiderata for that you would like to have. Okay, now something about generalized or abstract logics. Now, I'm talking now initially at a very general and abstract notion of logic. It has two components. You got a set of formulas, S, which may have three variables. This is a slight variation of definition you may find at other, but it's essentially equivalent. That usually you just refer to sentences. Now I'm allowing three variables. And a truth predicate relation between a model, a structure, and a formula phi, and assignment to the three variables of phi. Essentially saying you got some abstract definition that the model M satisfies the formula phi with the assignment, with this particular assignment to the three variables. As usual, we denote M models phi of A is alternative notation for the truth definition is true for M, phi, and the assignment. And the only requirement, this is completely general, is that the satisfaction relation will be invariant under isomorphism. Namely, if we got an isomorphism between a structure A and a structure B, then for every phi in our collection of formulas, and any sequence of members of A satisfies the the formula phi for the assignment A, if and only if B satisfies phi. Here there is a typo, and there probably will be many typos. Satisfy phi at the image of pi. Now, for a logic L and a set M, we denote by definable sets in M the collection of all subsets of M which are definables in the logic when you look at the structure M and epsilon and membership in the logic L. It's usual definition, except that you're not necessarily considering first order logic, but you consider more abstract logic, namely everything you can describe using the logic as subsets of the model M. And now, using some L as the construction of L as a prototype, suppose you try to construct in a model in the same way they construct L from essentially first order logic. Namely, given the logic L, you define a sequence through the ordinals, a sequence of sets L alpha L, which is defined by induction. You start from the empty set. You may, by the way, have a variation where you start from a given set, which is kind of the root of the construction. And for limit alpha, you take the union of everything you achieved so far. And then at the next stage, the successor stage, you take all subsets of L alpha of L, which are definable over L alpha of L. Now with some, now the inner model constructed from the logic L is the union of this L alpha L. Now it's not too difficult to show that the C of L is a model of set theory, maybe without choice. It depends to some extent on the logic, whether it satisfies choice. For instance, L of R, the minimum model containing all the reals, can be defined as something like that, whereas the formulas, the logic you use is L omega 1 omega. Because the formulas themselves do not have a canonical well ordering, so maybe the universe doesn't have a canonical well ordering, but under most reasonable logics, and there are some formal technical definitions of the logic that allows you to infer that C of L satisfy the external choice. I will not bother do it now. Now let's consider two extreme examples of as far as the two extreme in the sense of the two criteria that I phrased before of robustness and completeness. Gödel's L is the C of L, where L is the first order logic. Now L is very robust under actually the three meanings of robustness. You cannot change definition of L by forcing. It's absolute across models of set theory, provided they share the same ordinals. But it misses completeness. They are very canonical objects. Zero sharp is the prototype of such an object that L misses. It's not in L, but presumably if you assume that your set theory is rich enough so that this object exists, then it means that L, if you say that this is the inner model I would like to live in, or something that would be my home, so to say, then L fails to have this completeness. There is other extreme. The other extreme is suppose there's a logic you take second order logic. You take the sets which are definable using full second order logic. Namely, you construct using the same stages as construct L, but at every stage you consider all subsets of what you have done so far using full second order logic with parameters, of course, definable using parameters in the set you had so far. And the classical theorem of Mile and Scott tells you that that this is a well-known model. This is the class of literally ordinal definable sets, odd, which is exactly C of L, where R is second order logic. So odd, but almost by definition, is very complete. It contains, if you got a definable object, any definable object is in odd. Everything which is an ordinal definable object entirely means that its members are also is in odd. So it's a very canonical objects are in some sense by definition members of odd. On the other hand, it fails to have robustness very badly. You can force to make odd to have all kinds of behavior. Essentially, anything you can dream about properties of set theory, you can have odd satisfy the property, satisfy its negation. For instance, you can have odd satisfy CH, odd satisfy not CH, odd satisfy GCH, failing GCH in a bad way. In some sense, this notion of ordinal definability or taking your canonical universe or your ground universe to be odd, it's a very how should I say in English? What would be the English term? Is a very shaky ground, because odd, you can't say very much about what odd satisfies. So here you are, you got the two extreme cases, and hopefully you will have something in the middle. Now, as I said, odd at maximal completeness, canonical objects are ordinally definable. It's somewhat robust under a change in definition, but not non-robust across the universe of set theory. Now, it has one small advantage, which I would like to point out. There is a robustness of odd under changes of definitions. For instance, you get the same model of odd even if you replace second order logic by third order logic, etc. So there is a class of logics which are rather rich, which in some sense are rich enough or strong enough that if you use them to construct an inner model, you get still the same old odd. You can do something which strengthens second order logic, or you can do something which is a sublogic of second order logic. Sublogic means that your expressible power is included in the one. For instance, suppose that at every stage you use only sigma 1-2 formulas. Namely, you define sets which are definable at every stage by sigma 1-2 formulas. By the way, automatically, if you look at the stage of sigma 2 formulas, then immediately you catch Boolean combination of sigma 2 formulas. Sigma 2 in the usual sense, namely something that is definable by there exist subset, exist relation to set subject for all, and now coming things which are first order. Again, please feel free to ask any questions if you. So that means that logics can, there is a side lesson from that logic can have a very big difference in their expressive power. I mean, definitely full second order or third order is much more expressive than second order, or definitely second order is much more expressive than the logic in which you just have sigma 1-2 formulas. They can differ in their expressive power, but still have the same inner model. So looking at an inner model, that's a subject that will come back to it. It somehow clusters logics in a way which is more. It's another classification of general logics. But sigma 1-2, the interesting thing is that sigma 1-2 is a kind of minimal, because a result again of the same trinity of Juliet, myself, and Yoko, that there is a model of set theory in which the model defined by sigma 1-1 is not odd. By the way, it could be that it is odd. Maybe if you start from V equal L, and then any inner model is the universe, and therefore odd. But you can have a model which is it's not the full odd. And it tells you something, that there is a big jump when you move from intuitively. It means that when you move up from definition by sigma 1-1 formulas, you move to definitions definability by sigma 1-2 formula. There is a big jump in the in your ability to do things. In some sense, it could be analogous to jump you make, let's say, from if you think about computability theory, computational complexity, the jump from, let's say, something which is polynomial to something which is exponential or thing like that. This is a very analogy. I think it's both right.
I have one question.
Yeah, sure, please.
So this phenomenon that different logics, very different logics in terms of their expressive power, can somehow sometimes yield the same inner model, seems to be related, of course, to the kind of the speed at which the definable sets appear. So with of course, with the smaller logic, they will appear kind of more slowly, and with the stronger logic, maybe in the end it's the same, universe, but it appears faster or more slow. Now, so this somehow says that the way of building, hierarchies, like like constructional hierarchies, like in Gödel, is a way to compensate the speed of definability, so to speak. Do you have notions of comparing speed of definability analogous to ones you were describing in complexity theory, for instance?
I think it's a very interesting remark. We haven't done anything about speed of definability, but we do. But I think you're very right. The two logics which have the very different expressive power. The fact that they had the same model is because you catch up, and it's clear that you'll see one or two examples that maybe the other more expressive logic, it takes it's much faster. It gets you in order to catch up as far as the stages of the constructions. It takes you much longer to in a less expressive logic to catch up with the stages of construction of the bigger logic. We haven't done any study of the rate, so to say, of the construction, but it will be very interesting to do. Another interesting thing to do is to try and see whether there is something like a fine structure of this construction. But this is another thing which should be explored, and I must admit we never go to it. I will not have time. Any more questions? Let me just very briefly say something about the proof of this theorem. I will not give the proof. The idea is that you take omega. You don't have to use, but let's assume that in the universe you got omega many weakly compact cardinals, and then you destroy. You force a real, a new subset of omega, and you use the subset of omega. You say, I want to destroy some of these weakly compact cardinals. Namely, for instance, shoot a non-reflecting stationary set. Weakly compact cardinal should, every stationary subset of it should reflect. So you shoot a non-reflecting, but only of those which are coded by this real. Now, as far as Hod, you know which one. You know this set, this particular real, because you know which remains weakly compact or not. But on the other hand, if you just use sigma 1 formulas, it turns out that if you do it right, and again, I don't want to elaborate on technicalities, then you don't change the sigma 1 remains still the old Hod. You didn't change it. So this is roughly the idea. Okay, so now, okay. Any more questions? Okay, so now let's look at some extensions of first-order logics, which we may consider, and we try to say something about the inner model construction of those logics. So consider logic L of a quantifier, where with additional quantifier, well-founded quantifier, the QWF, where QWF of xy, of formula phi xy, means phi xy define a binary relation which is well-founded. Now this, of course, extends first order. In first order, you cannot say that something is well-founded. It's a very easy consequence of compactness. Okay, so that's definitely extension of first order logic. So that's one extension that we can consider. By the way, all the extensions I'm suggesting, extensions that were suggested, people were studying these logics. I mean, it's not something that we invented artificially for, this is something studied by model theorists, by some kind of recursion theorists. Okay, L Q1 is the first order logic with the additional quantifier, where Q1x means that there are uncountably many x's satisfy phi of x old. Then you say there are uncountably many x's satisfies the formula phi. So that's definitely extends first order logic. It's a nice logic. It has completeness theorem, some level of compactness, countable compactness, namely for countable theory, if every subset is a model, then the whole theory is a model. So you do have some. It's a nice logic. Okay, and the question is what do we get when you use that? Now another logic which is known, Magidor Malitz, something to do with it, is the first order logic with additional quantifier, which is like a Ramsey quantifier, where it says that Q1 MM, the one, by the way, stands for omega 1. XY phi XY means there are uncountable set of the model A such that any pair satisfy the formula phi. This is more expressive than the other logics. For instance, if you think about set theory, you can express the fact that a tree, that you have a tree that is an Arashine tree, you can have something that is a Suslin tree, etc. Okay, so and now let's look at something which is first order logic with an additional quantifier, the Harty quantifier, where QHXY, it applies to two formulas, and it means that the two sets, the set of x's satisfy phi and the set of y satisfies psi, have the same cardinality. It's a quantifier that tells you about the same cardinality. By the way, Yoko, you can tell me. I think that Harty was not a mathematician at all, right? He was a linguist, I think.
Yes.
And he was trying to study, natural language things that saying that there are, that the number of boys in this class is the same as the number of girls in this class.
Yes, exactly, yes.
Or something like that. But of course, the mathematician immediately grab it, and so you can have this quantifier, the cardinality quantifier. Okay, now another more examples, and I have three more examples. L of the quantifier Q cofinality omega is the first order of logic with additional quantifier that tells you that a certain linear order is cofinality omega. Q omega CF XY for phi agreements, phi XY defines a linear order that have cofinality omega. This is a logic that was studied by Shelach. He proved again that there is completeness for this logic, proof system, and there is a certain level of omega compactness.
Full Menachem.
Full
That's the
compactness.
one. Yeah.
It's full compactness. The only thing that almost the Levenheim-Skolem theorem, but you don't go down to countable structures, but only to think of size Aleph1. You have to reflect the fact that something does not have cofinality omega. So that's definitely then looks like a very, very nice logic. Now another logic which I don't think that formally as such it was, but there are variations of it that did appear in the literature, which I call L stationary omega, where the logic with the quantifier that you have some linear order, and let's say well ordering for simplicity, though it can make sense if it's not well ordered, and you have a notion y, and you say that the set of x's that satisfy phi is stationary subset of below y. Stationary, you said if you got a closed unbounded set that it always intersected, or you got a normal function, there exists a fixed point. Normal function is a function that a monotone function and at limit points that exist in the set, it's the limit of the thing. Then it's stationary below y. You can say that something, a certain, for instance, think about ordinals. You can say that a given set of ordinals is stationary in its soup. So this is the thing you can talk about. Definitely a very basic set theoretical concept that appears a lot in set theory. And you say, okay, suppose I throw in the information that a certain set is stationary. Again, if you have any question, please ask. Now, LQAA is the logic, stationary logic, is monadic now it's monadic second order logic. Namely, you have variables which go over subsets of the model, but when you expect to range over only countable subset of the universe. but you don't quantify. When you quantify over the countable sets, you are not quantifying. You don't say that for every countable subset something is true, or there exists countable subset. You only say that there are a lot of them. There are. Here there is a mistake, a typo. I said there exists a stationary subset of P omega 1 of M. I mean, or the countable subset of M. I'll give the definition in the next slide. I mean a closed and bounded subset. Here there should be a typo where you see my marker. This is a typo. I mean a closed and bounded subset. Maybe in some sense, most countable sets satisfy the formula 5. Now, by the way, when I put these three logics, each one of them extends the other, and it will be interesting. For instance, if we say that definitely as a model theorist, the expressive power, you got a strong expressive power, but since we say that we said before that logics with the different expressive power can still give you the same inner model. It will be interesting to compare the inner models of these three logics. Okay, let's do a very brief summary of what the inner models look like for these different examples that I have. Oh, but it's just a definition if somebody doesn't know it. For the last logic, the QAA. For a set A, P omega 1 of A is the collection of all countable subsets of A. A subset of the countable sets is closed if it closes under countable increasing unions. It's unbounded if for every countable set there exists something in the set C which covers it. A set is stationary if for every closed and bounded it is the non-empty intersection with S. Or equivalently, the S is stationary if for every algebra with countable many operations on A, there exists some X in S which is closed under the algebra. Okay, now let's go to our examples and see what can we say about the inner model constructed from these logics. Now, if you think about the well-founded model, though the quantifier is stronger the first order logic, you essentially get the same L, because if you think about in your construction, when you reach a certain stage, you ask questions whether something is well-founded, something not well-founded. If the inductive assumption that everything you've done so far is in L, then automatically you can answer all those questions in L. Namely, the set of definable sets over what you have so far is in L. Now, the remark of Andres is very, very appropriate here. The rate in which you know it is very different from the rates in which sets in L are constructed. Essentially, you have to go to the next admissible in L in order to know whether something is well-founded or not. Just think about the case, look at omega and look at recursive subsets of omega, recursive relation, binary relations for omega. Suppose this is the omega stage. In the inner model, where you use the well-founded quantifier, you immediately know which recursive, the next stage, you know which recursive binary relations are well-founded. In L, you have to go to the up to omega 1 Church-Kleeney before you have the answer. So this is a fine example of the different rate in which you still get the same model, but a different rate of construction. Where
here you
using
get
the quantifier, you speed up the using set, but still you end up with L.
So what you get in L at omega 1 Church-Kleeney would be obtained here in what, 2 steps or one step? Okay.
Yep. Not formally, not the ordinal, but definitely the information which is equivalent to omega 1 Church-Kleeney. Namely, to know which recursive, let's say, binary relations are well-founded, which is essentially coding the omega 1 Church-Kleeney. You do it in 2 steps. Okay, so this is a fine example. Now, CQ1 in L. Being uncountable. Now, being uncountable is not being well-founded is absolute between L and the universe, but being uncountable is not absolute between models of set theory. But still, the inner model you construct from Q1 from the model is still L. It's still the same. It's still the same model, because when you reach a set in L, then suppose that kappa is omega 1 of V. It's not omega 1 of L, but X is uncountable in V if and only if L thinks that its cardinality is at least kappa. So essentially, you catch up in this thing. In L, you have to catch up. You have to go all the way up to essentially to kappa, which is the omega 1 of V. But that's where you catch up essentially with. But still, the construction in L, you can ask the question whether something has got cardinality, which is at least kappa. Okay, now when you get our third example, which is the Magidor-Malitz quantifier, now not anymore. You don't have absoluteness anymore. The model that you get, the inner model that you get from this quantifier, can be changed by forcing. Here is a very brief description of that. You can define in L a sequence of Suslin trees on omega 1, which are independent in the sense that we can destroy Suslinity of some without destroying Suslinity of others. They're completely independent using the usual mechanisms of Jensen. And therefore, you can code, you got omega 2 many sets like that, and you can code a subset, any subset essentially of omega 2, you can code it. So therefore, you can force, for instance, that C Q1, since you can express in this logic that T is a Suslin tree, but by negation of this quantifier, you say it doesn't exist an uncountable set, but every two elements are incomparable, or there doesn't exist an uncountable set where anything are comparable. Therefore, you can code all kinds of things, and you can have models in which the inner model constructed from this logic satisfy continuum hypothesis, one that doesn't satisfy the continuum hypothesis. You can make all kinds of games in order to achieve that. So you lose the robustness. But did you really lose the robustness completely? Not quite, because if zero sharp exists in V, then the inner model constructed from the Magidor-Malitz quantifier goes back to L. It's somewhat strange. The existence of zero sharp, which tells you that the universe is very far from L, pushes down this inner model to L. And from now on, if you assume zero sharp, that's it. Then this inner model, the C of Q1 MM must be L. Okay, I will not. I'll skip the argument. Okay, now each of the other models we consider, the C of the RT quantifier, the cofinality omega, the stationary omega, the stationary logic, can all be changed by forcing. And each one can be forced to satisfy CH, violate CH. You can play all kinds of games with this model. It's interesting to see to what extent you can do it, but that's.
But you can't change the AA model to violate CH.
Sorry? Oh, you can.
Oh, yes, without large cardinals. Yes, okay, yeah.
Without large cardinal, of course.
Yeah.
No, of course you can change it. Over L, if you start from L, you can force all kinds of things and change make all kinds of changes. Okay, so now from now on we should call the cofinality omega logic and its brothers. That would be the other two. So now okay. So suppose that. So here is something that tells you something about their completeness, namely that C cof omega, C of Q cof omega is closed under sharps. Any set of ordinals that X sharp exists, then it belongs. That already means that it's not that if V is far from L in the sense that V is closed under sharps, let's say, then this model is closed under sharp. That shows that some can have some completeness, some canonical objects automatically are there included in this model. The same is true for the other models. The reason I put here only the one of the RT quantifier, because the other models are contained each other, so it follows from the one for the COF omega. Okay, now okay, no, I come back. Okay. Let me very briefly say something when my time is running out. Let me say something still about one idea of the proof. The proof, suppose you got a set of ordinals such that X sharp exists, and suppose that you got an ordinal which is above sup X, which has uncountable cofinality, which is regular cardinal of L of X. X sharp means that there exists a canonical set of indiscernibles for L of X. Then anything which has cofinality, you can show that if X sharp exists, then any ordinal which above sup X, which is regular in L of X, and has cofinality, uncountable cofinality, must be one of the canonical indiscernibles. That allows you, if you live in a model that knows which ordinal has got cofinality omega or not, this is exactly what the model constructed from the cofinality omega logic, then you can identify a proper class of indiscernibles for X, and that allows you to compute X sharp. Now, the inner model constructed from COF omega is closed under a very large variety of definable operations. We don't know exactly how much, it's still a question. But if X is a set of ordinals, then the Dodge-Jensen core models over X is included in that. Automatically you throw in, this model is closed under that thing. It closed under the, if you got a set X and there exists an inner model with, in V, an inner model with a measurable cardinal above the sup of X, then such inner model exists in you see COF omega, the cofinality omega logic. By the way, it doesn't have to be the same inner model, the same measurable cardinal. You can have a situation where, for instance, suppose that X even is an empty set. You can have in V, let's say, a model of the form L mu, inner model with a measurable cardinal. V could be equal to L mu, but in COF, in the C omega COF omega, the minimal inner model of, or the minimal cardinal which could be measurable in an inner model would be the omega square iterate of that of the original model. But still, some of the power, the large cardinal power that exists in V, follows down into this canonical inner model. Okay, now
how much of that? Sorry for the question.
Yes, please.
So how much? I mean, you said some of the large cardinal power can be somehow, kind of recovered by this inner model of Q cofinality omega. Is it known how much, or
no,
or what kind of delay you have to have like this omega squared?
That's something. Actually, there are indications, and I'll say something at the very end. There are very recent indications. Maybe it's much less than we thought. But it seems very likely that few measurable cardinals definitely is going to work. Maybe a proper class of measurable cardinals. We'll have to. We don't know yet the answer for that. Okay, and then if, for instance, something called like X dagger definitely exists. This is like the sharp for a model, inner model with a measurable cardinal, and the same is true for the other, the brothers of what I call the cofinality omega logic. Okay, so that's an inner model which has got a certain level of completeness. A certain canonical objects are there. To what extent it's robust? Well, the model itself is not robust. You can change the model by forcing, but the theory cannot be changed if you assume large cardinals in the universe. If you assume that there is a proper class of wooden cardinals, then the theory of the inner model construction of cofinality omega logic cannot be changed by set forcing. I was definitely concentrating here on set forcings and not class forcing. Class forcing, you can create all kinds of strange things. Like, for instance, you can start with something with a lot of large cardinals and move to, by Jensen coding the universe by real, make the universe equal L of A, where A is a real, and therefore you lose all the large cardinals. So that definitely the theory could but I'm talking about set forcings. So the theory does not change. In some sense, this is a prototype of the same thing that the result of Woodin, that the theory of L of R cannot be, if you got the proper class of Woodin cardinals, cannot be changed by set forcing.
You mean the first order theory of this inner model? The first order? Okay.
You know, whatever this model satisfies. By the way, which raises a very interesting question, which we don't know the answer, that this model satisfies CH. There should be a definite answer for that, because there should be a definite answer for that, because you know, you can't get a counterexample by forcing. That's what this theorem shows. It either satisfies CH or does not. Very likely it does, because we can show, I don't want to elaborate now, I don't have time, that there are a lot of reals, such as if you look at the theory of that logic over that real, that it satisfies CH. But we don't know the answer, and that's very annoying. But the set of reals is not changed by forcing. Namely, you can change the universe, this inner model, but you don't change the set of reals. You got some canonical set of reals, by the way. It's a sigma 1,3 set of reals, very canonical, countable in the presence of the proper class of Woodin cardinals, which would be very interesting to classify exactly what it is. Interesting side remark is that the theory, suppose that rather than saying cofinality is omega, you go to a logic in which the cofinality, to say that the cofinality is less than kappa for some regular cardinal kappa, then the theory is the same. It's not the same model, but the theory is the same theory. So actually, when you say cofinality omega, you say the cofinality is less than omega 1. So omega 1 is like the any other regular cardinal. This assumption. There are interesting things that actually a student of mine, Ur Yar, is working on it. That to say what happens if you combine several cofinality quantifiers. You say you can have a logic in which you can say the cofinality is omega, the cofinality is omega 1, the cofinality is omega 17. What happens there? And some of the results do follow. But again, I don't have time to talk about it. And the same is true for the other logics. That the theory is robust under forcing extensions. So you do get a very nice level of robustness. And some level of completeness. The issue is how much. So that actually raises a research program, which is very much ongoing research program that contains several items. For instance, classify logics by the richness of the inner model constructed from the logic. Which logics, the difference, as Andrew says, is just in the rate in which construct definable sets, but you end up with the same inner model. Each of the models of the form answer questions like, what are the properties? Does it satisfy CH, GCH? Is it L-like? Is it got diamond, and so on. Now another interesting question is, how do models of the form for some natural logic compare with the canonical inner models for large cardinals? There is a whole theory, of course, of a canonical inner model for large cardinals, for measurables, for Woodin cardinal, strong cardinals, Woodin cardinals. Probably, again, the status of that is not completely clear, I would say, but the work of Woodin on inner model for supercompact cardinals. So, so the issue, or something which is called the ultimate L. So the question is how these models compare with those models, how much they catch of those models. In particular, is the inner model constructed from logic is really the canonical inner model constructed from some concept of large cardinals, from a strong cardinal concept. And the other question is, can the canonical inner models for large cardinals can be presented as C of L for some natural logic L? I mean, artificially, you can cook up some logic which the construction of things like core models and so on are really C of L for some logic, but it looks somewhat artificial, not somewhat, I think to a large extent artificial, to cook up the logic that will do it. Okay, and we started having some answers to those questions. Result of Philip Welsh, published in the Journal of Symbolic Logic relatively recently, tell you that for the logic C of the QH, namely the RT quantifier, the cardinality quantifier, we know exactly what happens if we assume large cardinals in the universe. So C of H is exactly looks like the following thing. It's a canonical inner model that has a proper class of measurable cardinals. None of them is limit of other measurables, namely the large cardinal thing that you know is class of measurables, but none of them, but not measurable, which is limit of measurables. But this is not exactly the model. The model is not the canonical inner model that you get from it, but you take all these measurable cardinals and you introduce precursor generic to each one of them. You're changing each of them to cofinality omega. So this is the way this is the structure of this model. In particular, you know a lot about what it satisfies. It's either GCH, another L-like property, but you do have these precursor sequences which are, and this is exactly how the model the model looks like. In some sense, this result was disappointing because we were hoping that C of Q of H would contain more large cardinals, but that's a fact of life. It gives us something about. In fact, actually, I remember a number of years ago, before we started the study, that I was talking with John Steele, and John Steele said, essentially C of QH means that it's an inner model that knows which ordinals are real cardinals in V. By the way, it doesn't mean that it knows the evidence to the fact that they are cardinals. It doesn't know that, if something has got a certain cardinality, it doesn't have the evidence for that. It just know that it has a certain cardinality. And John Steele was conjecturing that let's give you a lot of set theoretical information about the universe, and probably if the universe contains supercompact, then this information will be enough to code the supercompactness, etc., by knowing which one are cardinals. It turns out that it's very far from that. Namely, you need it gives you some information, but not enough. Now, the canonical inner model above is of the form that you take normal measures on each Q alpha, or the class of Q alphas where none of them is the limit of others, and you add the precursor sequences. So it means that it has no measurable cardinals because all the measurable cardinals became a cofinality omega, no measurable cardinal itself, and no inner model with measurable, which is limit of measurables. It has an inner model with measurable cardinals, a class of measurable cardinals, but it doesn't have. So we know exactly what the structure of C of Q of H here. Okay, now for QAA, the one with the stationary logic, we know that we have a proper class of measurables in the model. Again, we're assuming some large cardinals, and many of them are limits of measurables. So in that sense, as far as catching the inner model CQAA catches more large cardinals. It got in some absolute sense more strength than knowing the cardinality logic. This is an example. We still don't know a lot about the structure of CQAA. We know that it satisfies CH. We know some other facts about it, but still there are many open questions. And for instance, we know that every cardinal which is regular in V, the filter which is generated by the clubs, by the Cronin bounded subsets of kappa, is restricted to, of course, to the model, is an ultrafilter on the model. Okay, so now what happens with some very recent advance, if that's a progress that I would like to mention, I think, getting close to it. Something which is almost a theorem, or maybe semi-theorem. Yoko, what do you say? Or Yoko, Juliet? Well, the square group, square is the group that the American Institute of Mathematics initiates, that you can have a group of a few people, the maximum is 6, that can meet together 3 times in San Jose and work on a certain problem. And they initially announced that they find a group on the this theory of inner models. Here is the group at the bottom of this page: Paul Larsen, myself, Ralph Schindler, John Steele, Yoko Banane, Wilson. There will be others that could join us. We can have visitors. Well, Juliet definitely should be included, and others. But anyway, the meeting should have occurred last October, I think, but because of the corona, it was cancelled. I hope it will happen in the future, though I don't know what the future of the AAM is, the American Institute of Mathematics, because I don't know whether you know, but the company that funds it, Fry Electronics, went out of business. So I don't know what will happen with the AAM. I hope still. But in the meantime, we decided to start working together using Zoom sessions. And this is something Zoom session we have 2 days ago, right? On Wednesday.
Yes.
And I say something which is almost a theorem. I would say a semi-theorem, which of course we have to check, but I think it looks very promising. And it tells you under mild large cardinal assumptions, if you look at C, Q omega stat, namely the one in which you know where a set of ordinals is stationary, ordinals of conformality omega, then in that model, every lambda which is regular in the model, which its V conformality is more than omega, is measurable in that inner model. Where the only normal measure on lambda is essentially the club, the omega club intersect with this model. Okay, so F lambda omega is the filter generated by subset of lambda, which are omega closed. So we know very likely we know something about this model. It actually looks very well, again, as a semi-theorem, that it looks like that it is the inner model constructed from this ultrafilters. So it has a proper class of measurable cardinals, also Lemaitre cardinals, which is limit of measurables, but no inner model with measurable cardinal of Mitchell order 2. Therefore, it satisfies GCH and many other L-like property. It is a canonical inner model for some large cardinals, but we know exactly the level of the large cardinals in which we can talk. Okay, now something which gives you some kind of, I'll be finishing in, I see my time is almost up, but I'll be finishing in a few minutes. It's okay, Andres? Andres?
Yes.
Okay, now can we say something about how large we can, these inner models can go, at least the models we were talking about. So there is a result together with Ralph Schindler that tells you that if there is a Woodin cardinal and M1 sharp exists, M1 sharp is the countable inner model for Woodin cardinal with its sharp. Again, you don't have to know exactly what definition of Woodin cardinal is, but it's some kind of canonical object that generates. Then every real of CQA appears already in M1 sharp. So, so for instance, you cannot expect more than as far as the, I mean, by now it seems that that's very far from the truth, much more, but you do have some kind of the bound on the complexity of the reals that would appear in these inner models. Remember, by the way, that the set of reals is robust. It doesn't change by forcing. Now, something again that we noticed, possibly noticed, again, it's a semi-theorem, not a theorem, that there is a real in, there is a real in CQAA, which is not in Q omega stat. So it means the QAA is, there is something which makes it stronger than Q stat. And that's an example where this inner model theory tells you something about the strength of logics. That as far as the expressive power, it was more, but even it's more in a more absolute way. It's even as far as the inner model, it generates more. And
So,
the real
so this is giving some new information about the logics, about LQAA.
Yeah.
And
the real, by the way, which is missing is probably something which is known as zero sword. Again, people that know the inner model theory, it's something that it's the minimal mouse that has got a top measure, which has got a top. I'm getting technical. A top measure, which is a Mitchell order 2. Okay, so again, hello.
Yeah.
So somebody was trying to ask a question, but I didn't hear him. Hello?
Is there a question by someone? Someone
There
else?
was I heard a question, but I didn't. Maybe you're going to send it by chat or something. Okay, let me
no.
check. I'll try and address it in a minute. Okay, the real which is missing is zero sword, which is a known real. But anyway, the almost theorem would say that the reals, that even this canonical set of reals of the canonical model of QH of the quantifier logic is included in the reals of the omega stationary logic, which is included in the QAA logic. I think there is a lot of work to be done. I think that the study of inner models constructed from generalized logic shed lights both about the set theory and about the expressive power of generalized logic and quantifiers. I think it's a combination of set theory and sometimes with generalized model theory. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And well, let us take questions from the audience. If there are any further questions, preguntas.
Okay, let me, okay, I'll share.
Okay. Questions? I do have some questions, but maybe
I'll
John,
try.
yeah.
I just was lost in the context between, well, you talked about the strength of the canonical model of the pulvinality quantifier.
Yeah.
And you first said if you force over L, then you can make CH false or not. And then basically you said if we start with a proper class of woodens, that then the theory becomes absolute or it becomes fixed. And what it's the overall status of changing from L to a proper class of woodens there. The original definitions of what you meant by you didn't mention a ground model, and I just don't quite understand where that comes into the picture.
No, the ground model. There's no ground model. I mean, you start from a universe V. That's your universe, right. And you interpret the logic the way that the way that your universe interprets them. Namely, you live in V, and now you define what is the cofinality logic. You ask yourself whether a certain linear order or an ordinal is cofinality omega in V. And
and so what's happened here is you've changed V from being a model of L to being a model.
Yeah, you change V model, and therefore you see that. By the way, the way that what the logic lets you do is get some information from the outside universe into the inner model. It's some kind of, in some sense, like do with Hod. Namely, you take some definable questions and you say, okay, I will not give you the evidence that the answer is such and such, but I'll give you the answer. I'll tell you which ordinal is a cardinal. I'll tell you which ordinal is cofinality omega. I'll tell you whether a certain set of countable collection of countable sets is stationary or not. Though you will not know even these countable sets, but I'll give you I'll give you the answer to your questions.
Okay, thank you. That straightened my point.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I don't know. How do I unshare the reader? I don't. No, this is not the right thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is being shared. Yeah. But I
see
have
your slides. We do see your slides.
Yes.
No, I want to.
What's that?
He looks.
I want to see you.
Okay.
Never mind.
Yeah. Any more questions? Anyone? I have a couple of questions.
Menachem, stop sharing, maybe?
Yeah, but I can't reach some of the window of the Zoom.
Oh, I think in the Zoom you have to go to gallery or something like that because there is a view
gallery,
of gallery that
right.
we have. So we can go to gallery view and we can see, I can
In
see
the
Yoko, Juliet.
Upper
Rose.
right of the screen.
Yeah, but not in my screen. Oh, okay.
View gallery. Yeah.
Okay. I discovered that.
Your Zoom setup. Or
Sorry. Just a minute. No, but where do I stop sharing? No, I do see a gallery, but I can't increase the.
But the host can stop the sharing.
no, but the sharing is. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So let me try that. Sorry. Okay. Participants.
I see now. I see your faces. That's what I care about. But you see, but
Okay.
no, I stopped the sharing. Oh, okay. Now you stop.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. That's
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
want.
Okay.
I want to see. You know, it's very frustrating.
Okay. So I have another question. Well, the first one is a very kind of vague question that will only reveal. So at some point in the beginning, you have the robustness criteria, which you described. You know, maybe the model itself is not affected by forcing, but maybe the model is affected by forcing, but the theory of the model is not affected by forcing. And you had an example of that. But have you encountered a situation where perhaps the theory is affected by forcing, but somehow it's by interpretability class, which is a weaker invariant, is not affected by forcing. So in a way, you're able to somehow recover from, I don't know, well, we have this sort of situation in model theory where you can, from the automorphism group, recover a structure. That's the, you know, the weakest situation possible. And it corresponds exactly to a situation where the theories might not be the same, but somehow the by interpretability class might be the same. I don't know if this even means anything much in this context, but you could conceivably have a situation where somehow your two inner models, your inner model is changed. Somehow the theory is slightly changed, but some essential aspect of the theory is not changed. And I don't know if you have found a situation like that, or if it makes sense.
It makes sense. There might be some way. I'll tell you something. For instance, that it's a little bit. For instance, consider the thing about Confinante omega logic, right?
Yeah.
As you say, the theory can change, but well, we know that, for instance, if zero sharp does not exist, if you're far from the large cardinals, then L of the Confinante logic is essentially L with L of a subset of the real omega 2.
Okay.
So whatever changes you make changes by subsets of omega 2. But essentially, once you know what happens to subset of omega 2, then you know.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's perhaps a different kind of weakening of, you know, like you can change the theory, but if you somehow fix some good part of the theory, like subsets of omega 2 or something, then you can still recover the same thing. And that might be related, I don't know, to the earlier question of how definability actually kind of slowly appears.
But by the way, it shows that you cannot have, for instance, if you took out the Confinante logic, if you don't have, suppose you don't have zero sharp, then you can have the continuum as Aleph 2, but you cannot have, if zero sharp, you cannot have continuum bigger than Aleph 2.
Okay. That's, yeah, that may be. So
it's a little bit in the if I read correctly what you say in the spirit of your question. But I don't.
Somebody wanted to say something or ask something?
Yeah. No, I just lost my internet connection sometime during the talk. Is the recording available or are the slides available?
Yeah.
The slides
I didn't ask for permission for recording, so I'm asking now.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Ramez.
You know, Andres, I'll send you. I can send you a Ramez. I can send you directly.
Okay.
slides, but I'll
Please.
send it to others and you can distribute it to whatever is interested.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
Thanks.
One kind of last question that also I don't know how to phrase, but somehow in your last results, you get a lot of information about not just the presence of measurable cardinals, but measurable cardinals that are limit of all measurable cardinals. Yet you do not get Mitchell order 2. You get a lot of it's in the kind of a low end of like above measurable cardinals, but kind of the low end. Now, what about strong compactness phenomena in these logics? Can you somehow capture some kind of strong compactness? Because it's kind of
that would have been a dream, but let me tell you something. Why this result is sometimes disappointing? Because originally, for instance, if you look at the theory of QAA, originally we thought that we started from the assumption about the model. In order to get some information about the theory, we started from Martin maximum. We started from MM or MM++, and got some results. And we were it was almost going in the direction that we are getting an inner model with a strongly compact cardinal in that model. But unfortunately, or this logic, maybe there will be a natural logic. But again, let me tell you again something which is no, this is not even a semi-theorem, but something which is let's say still science fiction. But one thing that came up in our session on Wednesday, that John Steele said that QAA may be much stronger than indicated by this result, namely that maybe at least not as strong as with strongly compact cardinal, but maybe strong cardinals or something like that, which will be interesting if that's true. I mean, actually, John Steele threw out some ideas, which, to tell you the truth, I don't not fully grasp. This is something I would like to explore in the next couple of days, but and maybe in our next Zoom session. But it will be very interesting. Which means that when you move from it's much more as far as the logic, it's much more. The stationary logic is much more than just saying which set of ordinals is stationary. This is much.
Yes. Well, it looks like that's kind of surprising. That's amazing in a way. So, thank you so much. These were my questions. I also had kind of a vague question, but I think you answered. Like, are there kind of new logics discovered through this? But I think you described a little bit of that, and some inner model that you have studied for a long time, and then you try to find what is its inner logic, and you find some. I think you said something along those lines toward the end of your talk.
Yoko, is that fair to say we discovered new logics?
I don't think we discovered new logics. No.
Well, some ad hoc ones.
Yeah.
Well, we made some ad hoc, yes, but
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Perhaps I missed something in the time I was interrupted. The first inner model constructed by Kunin for the negation of the axiom of choice from some large cardinal, I don't remember which. Does it fall?
Omega measurable cardinals.
Yeah.
Okay. Does it fall under this? Does it fit into this framework of yours? Yeah.
Yes, but this is exactly because what Kunin showed is that if there exists omega-1 many measurable cardinal, then the Chang model. The Chang model is the model constructed from omega sequences.
Yeah.
All the omega sequences of ordinals.
But it can. So you can take the language L omega 1, and then that generates. In fact, that was Chang's original construction of the Chang model, and that fits exactly our thing. But it doesn't satisfy choice. While, for example, this Koff model satisfies choice. But in fact, it can be proved that if there are uncountably many measurable cardinals, then there is an infinite set of measurable cardinals which is not in the Koff model. So the Kuhnen proof, in a sense, gives this result about a model which satisfies choice. But Chang model doesn't satisfy choice, so but it contains all countable sets. But this our model satisfies choice, but doesn't contain a countable set of measurable cardinals.
Yeah, well, I'm interested in negation of choice. That's why I was asking. Okay.
This is not, we were not looking at models like this for choice fields, though, as we said, it falls under the same general definition. L of R, the minimal model containing the reals, is exactly this model for L omega 1 omega, and the Chang model is L omega 1 omega 1. It's exactly this inner model construct. And you see where the fail of choice coming from. It's because the logic itself doesn't come with a natural well ordering of the formulas. That's why choice fails. You see, for the logics we described, the formulas are essentially infinitary objects, and you have a natural well ordering of the formulas, and therefore the usual proof of choice for L actually works. But but when you look at L omega 1 omega or L omega 1 omega 1, then
yeah.
I see. Well, this is really fascinating.
And with
I wonder if there is any other question by anyone else?
L infinity, if you use L infinity omega, which from the point of view of infinitary logic is not a very strong logic, you get V, simply V. So the maximal possible inner model. So by changing the logic, you get everything from L to V. So it's a whole spectrum. This logic sort of reflect the whole spectrum of inner models.
Yeah, but therefore it makes pertinent the question of whether you could find a natural logic that will give you some of the canonical inner models for large cardinals. These are inner models we're studied, we were interested in. Could they be phrased as the inner model constructed from some logic?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Menachem, one thing we never, we're ultimate L. We never talked about, is there any connection at all to extended constructibility?
The what?
Wooden's ultimate L. Is there any connection to this project?
I wanted to ask this is
again, the ultimate L, presumably if it exists and so on, will be constructed by some kind. It will be the ultimate construction, the large cardinal construction, with the kind of thing. And this is exactly the general thing. Can we phrase that as some kind of logic? I don't know.
But in a way, it seems that this blend of techniques is giving new tools to the inner model program. At least, from the outside, it looks from your description of the results that you have had in your group. So maybe do you think that for Juliet's question, like for trying to get an inner model description of what ultimate L should be, these logics or this connection with logics could give any additional tools? Or
I don't know. This of course will be something we would like very much that will happen, but I don't know. It's very far. I mean, so far, take even the inner model which are very well known. Take the the canonical inner model for wooden cardinal. Could that be represented as the inner model construction from some logic? In some sense, the construction of some logic is more. It seems to me more. Maybe the people doing inner model theory in the standard, like John and Ralph Schindler, Yehudi, maybe will disagree, but it looks a little bit more natural, more manageable, because you construct up to a certain stage, and you define some concept of definable sets, and you say, okay, these are all the. You have a concept of definability. You say, I'm taking all definable subset of what I've done so far. Okay. Their definition is much more. For me, it's interesting, of course, the fantastic results, but it looks less intuitive. Essentially, what you do, you say, okay, is there some kind of extender now you can put on the sequence? But actually, the canonical model is not even that. You put some extenders, you get a sequence, the so-called the KC construction, and then you take some when you finish constructing this whole thing, you take some Skolem hull of the construction to get something which will be more canonical, because your original definition is not canonical enough. You make a construction. The way the inner models for large kernel, the way they look now, is that you go along and make a construction, and then there is some kind of choice involved in many stages of the construction, and then you get some universe which is not very canonical. But now you say, if I take some Skolem hull over a stationary class of ordinals or something like that of this model, and collapse it, that will become canonical. So I don't know. I would love to have a very natural logic that would allow us to build it stage by stage. Okay, but I'm curious. What time is your talk in New York?
It's 2 p.m. in New York. I think it's like 10 p.m. in Israel. It is kind of, or 9 p.m. perhaps. 9 p.m.
9 p.m. No, 7 hours.
Yeah, 9 p.m. Yeah, it's so. Yeah,
if you could send me something, this is definitely something I'm interested in. So if you probably I will not.
Okay.
I'll join, but if you could.
Okay. Yeah, there might be a recording. Yeah, and I might actually have some additional questions on that other work at some point. Actually, I gave 2 titles to a series of it's really 2 talks. So today's talk number 2, which is really it really engages that paper, and it is called virtual large cardinals connected to these new logics. Well, to the logics I spoke about last time, which are different. Questions to Boni, Dimopoulos, Gitman, and Magidor. So that's the way it is called. But of course, I can rephrase the questions and send them to you. And
okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, I guess. Well, this was a wonderful, mixture of many ideas, and I'm sure we are here with many more questions. But I think this was wonderful. Thank you very much, Menachem.
Well, thank you for listening. Thank you, and hopefully we'll
How come Fries was funding logic?
Sorry?
How come a computer supermarket like Fries was funding research in logic?
No, it's not in logic. It's in mathematics in general. What happens is Mr. John Fry was a student with math major in University of California, Santa Cruz, and he liked the subject very much. But because of family pressure, he didn't. I don't know whether he had the potential of doing a PhD or something like that. But family pressure went to his family business. But he established this American Institute of Mathematics, which, by the way, located. I don't know whether it's located. I don't know what will happen now. It's located in the corporation headquarters in San Jose.
San Jose, yes. Yeah.
He had plans for building. I don't know what will happen with the plans. Because of the corona, about 3 or 4 months ago, from one day to the next, Fry Electronics closed down.
Yeah, I know that.
don't know. So I don't know what will happen to the American Institute of Mathematics.
Yeah.
Was that a,
disappeared.
did they close permanently or did they just suspend operation?
No, they closed. They closed. The company closed.
Yeah, okay.
But they took next.
Hmm.
So.
Well, the square is official, so it doesn't matter where it
Yes,
meets.
can relocate. Hopefully.
It can be translated.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Menachem, and all of you for being here. And yeah.
Okay.
So I have to go.
Bye, Menachem.
So
Okay.
thank you.
Well,
And
very nice
hopefully
to see
see
you.
real life next time. Yeah.
Okay.
Good night.